night has always been more than just darkness. It was once a hunting ground where survival balanced on the edge of silence. When the sun slipped away, early humans entered a world ruled by eyes that glowed, teeth that cracked bone, and claws that could strike before a heartbeat was heard. The shadows carried secrets, and in those shadows waited beasts built by evolution to track, stalk, and kill. Our ancestors weren't kings of the world back then. They were prey, trembling near firelight, sensing movement in the black void beyond. What hunted them was not myth, but muscle and instinct sharpened over millions of years. Leopards that dragged bodies into caves, hyenas that cracked skulls like brittle shells, owls that fell from the sky in silence. These predators shaped not only our history, but our very psychology. Even now, when you feel that unease in the dark, it's not random, it's memory. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear is a story written in fossil scars, puncture marks, and vanished screams. And some details I will not reveal just yet. Night in the prehistoric world was not silence. It was an execution ground where humans were hopelessly outmatched. Our eyes, fine-tuned by evolution to recognize ripe fruit, distant game, and shifting daylight on the savanna, betrayed us the moment the sun slipped beneath the horizon. What felt like blindness to us was, to predators, a theater of opportunity. Leopards could see 6 times farther in low light than any human ever could. To them, the darkness was not an obstacle, but a cloak, a veil that hid their movements as they stalked closer. Their whiskers, wired directly into the nervous system, mapped air currents so precisely that even in total blackness, they could judge proximity with surgical accuracy. A sleeping hominin had no warning. A leopard's strike came in silence, followed only by the crunch of bone and the dragging of flesh into caves or trees where the kill would be cached. Hyenas prowled with an entirely different arsenal. Their olfactory bulbs, 40% larger than ours, translated the air into a map no human could read. They could detect prey from over a mile away, follow scent trails days old, and most terrifying of all, distinguish the faint chemical signature between healthy and weakened individuals. To a hyena, the breath of a sleeping human was not safety, but a signal, a beacon revealing vulnerability in the night. And when they struck with jaws built to pulverize. Modern spotted hyenas can generate a bite force strong enough to shatter bones lions ignore, but their Pleistocene cousins, the massive, short-faced hyenas, carried jaws with an even higher bite force quotient exceeding 150. For comparison, a human barely scores 40. Archaeological sites from Africa to China still tell the story. Skull caps and shattered femurs found in ancient hyena dens, bones stripped and cracked open for marrow, remains of Homo erectus mingled with the leftovers of antelope and horse. These were not scavengers feasting on accidents. They were hunters pulling humans into their dens, a pattern repeated so consistently it leaves no doubt. Yet sight and smell were only part of the predator's arsenal. Saber-toothed cats stalked the night with a hunter's precision. Their forward-facing eyes overlapped fields of vision, granting depth perception that allowed them to leap with deadly accuracy. Their fangs, exaggerated into weapons of fear, were not awkward ornaments. They were designed to puncture soft tissue and crush through skulls. The fossil record shows this with chilling clarity. Hominin bones with neat puncture wounds, spacing identical to saber-toothed canines, evidence of throats pierced and skulls punctured while the victims were still alive. Even their whiskers carried purpose, acting as tactile sensors that allowed them to hunt in absolute blackness where humans froze in panic. And then there was the threat from above. The giant Cuban owl, Orni megalonyx, stood a meter tall, its talons rivaling the claws of a tiger. Owls have always been masters of silence, their feathers reshaped by evolution into perfect noise-canceling structures. A comb-like leading edge breaks turbulence, soft trailing edges muffle air, and a velvet-like surface swallows the final remnants of sound. The result? Death falling from the sky without a whisper. Scale that to a 20-kilogram predator capable of striking at 40 miles per hour, and you understand why the fossil record in the Caribbean holds bones of primates and small mammals torn apart by talons in total silence. To early humans, even the air itself was dangerous. But perhaps the most damning truth is not just in what the predators could do, It's in the patterns of death they left behind. At Swartkrans Cave in South Africa, archaeologists uncovered layers of bones belonging to hominins, leopards, hyenas, and saber-tooths. But the human bones told a darker story. Puncture marks from leopard fangs, caching patterns identical to predator kills, and a shocking estimate that nearly 1 in 5 early hominins at the site ended their lives inside a leopard's jaws. 20% of our ancestors gone to a single predator in a single location. Think about that number and then realize it was only one hunting ground among thousands. Chimpanzees and orangutans could retreat high into the trees when night fell, building nests out of reach, but humans had already lost that sanctuary. By 3 million years ago, our anatomy had shifted. Arms shortened, legs lengthened, feet restructured for walking upright. It gave us endurance on open ground, but robbed us of the ability to climb swiftly into the canopy. The high refuge of branches was no longer ours. Instead, we stood exposed on the ground with poor night vision, no claws, no fangs, surrounded by predators perfectly engineered to exploit darkness. The night did not belong to us. It belonged to them. And yet, despite the horror written into bone and shadow, one question lingers. How did our ancestors endure long enough to push back, long enough to leave us here telling this story? The answer is hidden in small adaptations, fire, voices, weapons that slowly tilted the balance. But before we reach that turning point, the fossil evidence reveals something even more sinister. Predators that didn't just hunt humans as part of a wide diet, but may have specialized in killing us. And that fact, which I'll reveal next, reshapes everything we thought we knew about who truly owned the night. They were not random killers. Each predator carried a toolkit honed by millions of years, a set of weapons and instincts that made early humans not just occasional prey, but regular entries on the menu. Start with Dinophilus, the so-called false saber-tooth, a cat built like a leopard but heavier, its body balanced perfectly for ambush. Fossils of this predator appear side by side with the remains of Australopithecus and Paranthropus at multiple South African sites, a statistical association too frequent to dismiss as coincidence. Its shorter fangs were ideal for piercing the skulls of small primates, and the pattern of puncture marks on hominin crania suggests a terrifying possibility. Dinophilus may have specialized in primates, including our ancestors. One paleontologist called it the hominin killer, a title not given lightly. But Dinophilus was not alone in this grim gallery. Enter Pachycracuta brevirostris, the giant short-faced hyena. Imagine a hyena the size of a lion weighing over 110 kilograms with jaws that generated forces sufficient to crack open elephant femurs. That is not metaphor, that is biomechanics. Fossils reveal muscle attachment sites that suggest a bite force quotient above 150 compared to the spotted hyena's already devastating 117. Humans, by comparison, score only around 40. At Dragon Bone Hill in China, archaeologists uncovered Homo erectus remains reduced to skull caps and shattered long bones within ancient hyena dens. The evidence was unmistakable. Marrow extracted, bones split. Humans processed as systematically as antelope or deer. And if hyenas were relentless scavenger hunters on the ground, the open plains carried another threat. The cave lion, Panthera spilea, a beast 15% larger than modern lions, with eyes adapted to detect prey hundreds of feet away in starlight. Unlike today's lions, these predators hunted in colder, harsher conditions and may have relied more heavily on caves, the very shelters humans sought for protection. Cave paintings in France depict them with eerie accuracy, muscular shoulders, broad faces, no manes. Recent DNA analysis shows they were not just big lions, but a distinct lineage, diverging 500,000 years ago. This means their behavior may have differed too, perhaps even more specialized in group hunting, perhaps bolder in tackling prey like humans. At Kent's Cavern in England, lion bones were found alongside human artifacts, a quiet but chilling reminder that humans and lions once competed tooth to spear for the same shelters. But the night sky itself carried teeth. Ornimegalonyx, the giant Cuban owl, could strike with talons 8 centimeters long, falling at 40 miles per hour in absolute silence. Prehistoric humans who thought the skies safe would learn otherwise. Fossils of primates torn by owl talons still lie in Cuban caves, their bones telling of kills that came with no warning. And woven among these predators were the leopards, silent, patient, and devastatingly efficient. At Swartkrans, analysis showed leopards alone might have killed 20% of all hominins at the site, dragging them into caves and caching them alongside baboons and antelopes. To a leopard, a hominin was not special, just another slow, ground-bound primate too clumsy to escape into the trees. Yet among all these predators, one stood apart not just for strength, but for cruelty encoded in evolution. Dinophalus, whose teeth bore the crushing adaptations perfect for skulls, whose fossils repeatedly appear in layers rich with hominin remains, suggesting not chance but preference. A predator that learned our weaknesses and exploited them ruthlessly. The roster of our ancient enemies was vast, but what unites them is this. Every one of them owned the night in ways humans could not. They hunted with vision that turned blackness into daylight, noses that mapped the unseen, ears that caught the shallow breath of a sleeping child. And as the fossil record proves, they hunted us not rarely, not occasionally, but systematically. Yet this reality sparks a question too dangerous to ignore. If predators dominated so absolutely, if night was their kingdom, and we were nothing but fragile intruders, how did humans ever survive at all? The answer is not in brute force, because brute force belonged to them. It lies instead in something else, something far more subtle, an adaptation not of bone or claw, but of fire, voice, and thought. And before revealing how humans began to turn the tide, we must first explore the places where this war between predator and prey played out most vividly. Caves. Caves that promised shelter, but often delivered only death. Caves, to early humans, must have looked like salvation. Stone walls to block the wind, shadows to hide from prying eyes, and ceilings to protect against rain. But the fossil record tells us something far darker. Many caves were not sanctuaries at all, but killing grounds, larders where predators dragged our bodies to be consumed in safety. Take Swartkrans Cave in South Africa, where layer after layer of bones tells a story written not by humans, but by leopards. The cave floor is littered with punctured skulls of Australopithecus and early Homo, holes so perfectly matched to leopard canines that no doubt remains as to their author. At least 20% of the hominin fossils found there show direct evidence of predation, a statistic so high it suggests not occasional misfortune, but systematic hunting. And Swartkrans is not unique. At Sterkfontein and Dremolen, similar patterns emerge, hominin bones chewed and cached alongside antelopes, monkeys, and baboons. To the predators, a human was no more special than a grazing zebra, just slower, weaker, and tragically easier to catch once night fell. In Guatri Cave in Italy, another horror unfolds. A Neanderthal skull was discovered with its face crushed, its brain case broken open, the marrow and tissue scooped clean. At first, scientists speculated cannibalism, but further study revealed the true culprit. Hyenas, cracking skulls the same way they cracked open the heads of horses and bison. This was not an isolated accident, but part of a long pattern of Neanderthal remains inside caves that double as hyena dens, dens littered with bones shattered for marrow, sorted into piles, their arrangement echoing the feeding habits of scavenger hunters who treated humans as ordinary prey. Even more chilling is the discovery of the SK-54 skull, belonging to a young Australopithecus child. Its dome-shaped cranium bears two perfect puncture marks, spaced precisely as wide as a leopard's canine teeth. No weapon, no tool, no accident could have made them. The child's life ended in an instant, carried into a cave, its skull punctured and body consumed. And SK-54 is just one among many. Across Eurasia and Africa, caves tell the same story, alternating layers of human and predator occupation, as though the two species were locked in an eternal contest for the same ground. Humans lit fires, left stone tools, carved bones. Predators left gnawed remains, dung, and kill sites. The line between refuge and death trap blurred constantly, and often it was the predator that prevailed. Even in Europe, tens of thousands of years later, cave lions occupied the same spaces humans sought, leaving behind scratches on walls, bones of prey, and a silent warning that these were not empty spaces waiting for us. They were already claimed by rulers of the dark. The terrifying irony is that the very shelters humans hoped would save them became traps. Places that funneled scent, amplified sound, and offered predators a predictable source of food. To walk into a cave in the Pleistocene was to step onto contested ground where every shadow might conceal an ambush, every corner might hold the remains of those who failed before you. And yet, humans kept returning to caves again and again because the alternative, open plains under starlight, with predators circling unseen, was no safer. Fire flickered in those caves, casting weak halos against the walls. But fire did not always last, and predators learned to wait until the flames died. The bones prove it. The gnawed remains stacked in layers show that humans for millions of years were not lords of the caves, but intruders, tolerated only as long as they were strong, and consumed the moment they faltered. The question that lingers is not whether humans died in caves, they clearly did, but whether predators sometimes preferred to let us gather there, a predictable food source returning generation after generation to the same fatal ground. That possibility forces us to see caves not as the birthplaces of culture, but as arenas of survival where humanity was shaped by constant predation. And the most haunting truth: the shadows of those caves still live in us. The claustrophobia some feel in darkness, the unease at a rustle in a confined space, those are not irrational fears. They are inherited memories of a time when stepping into a cave was a gamble with death, when the silence of stone chambers carried not safety, but the echoes of teeth closing on bone. For most of our history, we were prey, our bones scattered in caves alongside antelopes and monkeys, punctured by leopard fangs or cracked by hyenas. Then slowly, the balance shifted. Fire was the first rebellion. Evidence from Wonderwork Cave shows humans tending flames 1,000,000 years ago, and predators feared that light. Fire carved out hours of safety and gave humans time to gather, share warnings, build bonds. Around it, culture was born. Stone tools followed, hand axes sharp enough to kill, then spears hardened by fire, weapons that turned humans from scavengers into hunters. But our true weapon was cooperation. Alone we were fragile, but together, with shouts, gestures, and vigilance, we became something no predator had faced before, prey that could fight back in numbers. Over time, predators hesitated. Leopards and lions learned to keep their distance from fire-lit camps, and hyenas discovered that humans could strike back with stones and spears. Still, the war was never one-sided. Fossils show humans and saber-toothed sharing the same land for thousands of years, each side winning and losing in turn. What gave us the edge was patience, endurance, and planning. Predators killed with speed, humans killed with persistence. The turning point wasn't one battle but a slow tilt, a shift from hunted to hunter, and yet, even as we rose, the memory of fear never vanished. The fire kept the dark at bay, but the dark always pressed close, reminding us that our new power was fragile and hard-won. We were born in the shadows, shaped by predators who hunted us without mercy. Fire, weapons, and unity carried us from prey to predator, but the fear never left. Even today, every flicker of unease in the dark is proof the wild still lives inside us.